Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again to the info session for the MA in Psychology program at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. What I want to cover today is really giving you an overview of the program, of course, career prospects, and then finally talk about the admissions process. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the CUNY system, we are the City University of New York. It is the largest urban public university system in the United States. The CUNY School of Professional Studies started in 2003. It is part of one of the schools within the CUNY consortium of over 24 campuses. That particular school is called the CUNY Graduate School and University Center, and we are part of that. So we are accredited by Middle States Commission on Higher Education. It is very important that when you're looking at graduate schools that you find a school that is accredited by a reputable accrediting body. We are also registered with the New York State Department of Education, and it is the Office of the Profession. So what these things tell you is that our program has gone through a rigorous review process and that it has been approved and deemed to be a quality program that gives students and attendees the information that they need to be successful in the particular area of education. In this case, it's developmental psychology and IO psychology. So our particular campus, the CUNY School of Professional Studies, is home to 11 master's degree programs, 11 bachelor's degree programs, 3 dual degree programs, and then 9 certificate and advanced certificate programs. So we, while a small school with 3,200 students, or just a little over 3,200, we are growing quickly. It is a pretty robust campus. We have a lot of our programs that are online, but some of them are also face-to-face, which means that we have a campus. It's located on 31st Street between 6th and 7th Avenues. For those of you who are not familiar with New York City, we're situated right in between Penn Station and the Empire State Building. So our particular master's program in psychology, and there are other MA and Psych programs throughout CUNY, wonderful programs. What sets us aside is that we are the only fully online program at CUNY. And the thing about that is that, we recognize that there were a lot of students who were interested in pursuing graduate education in psychology, but they were not able to attend the classes face-to-face, either for scheduling purposes or because their responsibilities dictated that they just couldn't carve out a particular time or two each week to attend their classes. We also found that students who were in some, more rural areas wanted to get a master's degree in psychology, but they didn't have a campus near them. They didn't have access to a school, or again, due to responsibilities, they just couldn't attend. So we devised this program and developed it and proposed it. It was approved to cater to those students and to bring a program to them, whether they're living in a rural area or whether they're in New York, a program that would be flexible in terms of them being able to access material, work with faculty, work on projects, gain credits, gain a degree without actually having to be anywhere physically. So we focus on degree completion mainly at our campus in terms of our undergraduate degrees in particular. But in terms of the graduate programs, that emphasis is on working adults. So a lot of our students in the graduate program have taken some time off between their bachelor's degree and now their master's degrees and been in the workforce. They've raised children, they've been in the military, they've done all sorts of things with their lives and then have decided to come back. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have the more traditional student who finishes their bachelor's degree and goes right into a master's degree. We do have that as well, which means that we have this really broad group of students who bring their experiences into the classroom and really are able to share and think about those experiences through the lens of psychology. And we ask students to bring those experiences in and to think about how those experiences shape the way they think as an IO psychologist or developmental psychologist. We have students that range from a more traditional age, like 22, 23. Of course, those are the ones that go right into a graduate program after a bachelor's degree program, but we also have students who are in their 60s. So it really is a pretty diverse group of students, and we're really proud of that. Another thing that sets our program aside is the affordability and the flexibility. So as I mentioned before, the online program ensures that you don't have to be anywhere physically. And in that way, it provides some flexibility. You don't have to be in a class Monday at 7. You can be in class Tuesday at 4 in the morning, if that happens to be the end of your work shift. You can also work on Friday at 3. It really doesn't matter as much. We do ask that students log into classes 3 to 4 times a week so that they can read announcements and things that are going on in the class. They also need to participate in discussions and work on projects and those kinds of things, just like you would in any other class setting. However, you do have some flexibility, not necessarily in terms of when the assignments are due. Those are set, of course, by the faculty member, whoever the professor happens to be. But there is flexibility in that when you complete your work, or when you attempt to complete the work, is really up to you in some ways. But I'd like to make the distinction, because sometimes people think of online learning as being self-paced learning or independent study, and it's not that. There are firm deadlines. But when you tackle that work in a lot of ways, it is up to you to decide. It's also a very affordable program. If you look at our tuition page, you'll see that CUNY is a wonderful bang for your buck. It is a high quality education for a very affordable price. And for students who are in online programs, such as the MA in Psychology program, no matter where a student is, they receive in-state tuition. So if you're in California, North Carolina, it doesn't matter, it's in-state tuition. Our courses are taught by academics and practitioners, so they're people who usually have experience in a traditional academic setting, but also experience in some setting that's related to the field, so IO or developmental. So for example, one of our faculty members also runs a consulting firm and does independent work as an IO psychologist. We have another faculty member on the developmental psychology side who also spends a lot of her time working in hospitals in a neonatal intensive care area. So we are very proud of our faculty because they, like our students, bring their experiences from outside of the classroom into the classroom, and students are able to really learn from those experiences. So it's not just learning from a textbook, for example. Part-time students are welcome in our programs. Those students do not have to attend full-time, as is the case in some traditional MA in Psychology programs. So as long as our students are taking 1 class a semester, if that's the pace that works for them, that works for us. We have very few students who take 4 classes and carry that 12 credit full-time load. The reason why is because, as I mentioned, most of our students come to online learning because they have very full schedules, they have lots of responsibilities, and it just does not allow for 4 classes. If you think about a rough estimate of about 12 to 15 hours, and again, every class is different, but we use the 12 to 15 hours just as a way for students to gauge how much time they need per week per class for papers and readings, etc. Of course, some weeks there's more work, some weeks there's less work. Some particular courses are harder for people to understand, and so they have to review the material twice, and they take a little bit more time. But if you think about it that way, taking 4 classes is like another full-time job. So if you already have a full-time job, that's probably not going to be something that you'd be interested in doing. But many of our students take 2 classes, and they find that that's really manageable with a full-time job and other responsibilities. We also offer some of our courses in the summer, so students have the option to take some of those courses then. We don't have every course offered in the summer, but we do offer many of the core courses, and we'll talk about those shortly. And we offer statistics every summer, so the students can take it there if they want to just focus on that one thing. A lot of students are intimidated by statistics, and they like to isolate it and just take it alone in a 7 or 10 week session, and that's fine. In terms of our concentrations for our program, we have 2. So on the transcript, on the degree, it's a general psychology degree. So it says MA in Psychology. And then the transcript denotes the area of specialty or concentration or track. In our case, it would either be industrial organizational psychology, which is the study of human behavior in organizations in the workplace. They're studying or focusing on things like productivity in the workplace, worker satisfaction, job satisfaction, motivation, performance, etc. Or developmental psychology, which is the study of human growth throughout the lifespan. This includes infancy all the way through adulthood. And when we think about developmental psychology, I always think about it as being one of the broader areas. It's wonderful in that way because people can focus on developmental psychology and maybe they start their career working with children and then maybe sometime later in their career they decide to shift over to adolescence or the geriatric population. It's a very broad subfield of psychology, and so there's a lot that can be done with it. There's also a lot of settings in which developmental psychologists can find themselves. If you think about working with infants, you could find yourself, like our faculty member, working in a neonatal area, because developmental psychology is focused not just on human growth physically, but also human growth emotionally, cognitively, socially. So those who work in geriatrics, for example, might find themselves working in a nursing facility or nursing home facility and working on geriatric care and keeping people focused and cognitively sharp and developing in the way that is most productive and most beneficial for the well-being of people in their later adulthood. So in terms of who should apply for this program, we find that most of our students fall into one of these three categories. And I would actually venture to say all of them probably fall into one of these. One, it would be people who are already in the field. So they're doing something related to developmental or IO psychology or psychology in general. And in order to move up in their current position, they need the credentials. And so they come with their wide breadth of experience, which we appreciate. And they need the credentials and the education to match that. And so those students find this to be a good place for them. We also have students who are trying to make a career shift. So they've been doing something, I can think of one student that we have right now who spent a lot of time as a lawyer and now has decided that just doesn't seem to be the career path that they want anymore. And so they've decided to go into psychology, but making the leap from being a lawyer to being in psychology is one that is really difficult to make unless you have something that helps that narrative make a little more sense to a prospective employer. And going back to school, getting a different educational experience and credentials can help make that shift a lot easier. And then third are those students who wish to pursue a doctorate in one of these two areas, developmental or IO, or psychology in some other area, or even some other field. But they use this as really kind of a stepping stone to get there. Doctorate programs are notoriously competitive. Some of the really rigorous psychology programs, the very competitive, usually clinical psych programs, some of them take 3 students, 5 students, 7 students a year. There are very few slots available. And in order to compete, they want to demonstrate that they can successfully complete graduate work. And so that master's degree and that transcript demonstrates that to an admissions committee who's looking at who to admit into their very few slots of their PhD program. In terms of our curriculum, our program is a 36 credit program. All of our courses are 3 credits. So if you do the math, it's 12 courses. We divide the courses into 5 areas. Students take 3 core courses, that equals 9 credits. They take 2 research courses, that's 6 credits. 2 capstone courses, another 6 credits, 3 specialization courses for the 9 credits, and then 2 elective courses. And right now we have very limited electives. So for each track, there are 2 electives that students have to take, and there are 2 being offered. So remember that the program started in spring of 16. So we had our first graduating class in spring of 18. And so we're still developing the electives. Eventually there will be a selection of, we hope to have 4 or 5 for each track, and then students could decide which 2. But as I said, right now there's 2, so they're sort of chosen for you. To break it down just a little bit more, I'd like to show you what the courses are. So for the core courses, I mentioned that students need to take 3 of these courses, and they really set a foundation and make sure that everyone has the same foundational courses. So learning and cognition, biological basis of behavior, social behavior, theories of personality, and psychopathology. Students choose 3, and we ask them to choose the 3 that make the most sense for their future career path. So those who are interested in looking at developmental psychology, and particularly the geriatric population, they might be interested in learning and cognition, right? Because you're looking at the cognitive changes that are going to happen, especially in later adulthood. Maybe biological foundations of behavior, because as we get older, our bodies change substantially, right? And so that might be a good class to take. And maybe they decide on social behavior, because that feels like something that would be really helpful, is to understand how people operate and function in social communities. Whereas somebody that's looking maybe at working with youth and juvenile detention centers and looking at their development during their periods away from their families might decide to choose a different combination of those 3, but we really leave that up to students. Students then move forward into their research courses. They take advanced statistics and advanced research methods. A lot of students, as I mentioned earlier, are a little bit intimidated by statistics, but I would say that I regularly hear from students who say, I was so scared of this class, and then I took it, and it was actually kind of fun, and it was interesting, and I learned that statistics is a different kind of way to work with numbers and a different way of thinking. So I would, just say to people who are listening right now to this info session, don't let statistics intimidate you. We wrap our students in support systems, and so we really help people get through both research methods and the statistics class. Now, I kept the Capstone courses on the research and Capstone slide because they're all very closely intertwined with each other. It's important that students have an understanding of statistics and research methods so that at the end of their time with us, they can complete their Capstone project. But again, there's classes that happen in between these 2 groups. So the Capstone project planning course is the first class students take, and then the second class they'll take, again, this is at the end of the time with us. Their very last semester, they take the what's called Capstone project class. So they plan it for a semester, and then they execute it the next semester. And it is a traditional thesis. So we call it the Capstone project, but the form that it takes is a master's thesis. So students design a study related to their track that they're interested in. They create a methodology, and then in the next semester, they execute it. By the time students get to this point, they have the tools and the information and the confidence to do these projects. And our first group in spring of 18, they did an amazing job. So I'm looking forward to our fall 18 students and beyond. So students decide on their topic on their own, and hopefully by the time they've gone through the program, they have something that they're really anchored to and really interested in, and they can pursue that for their project. I mention that now, even though obviously you're just listening to an info session trying to figure out whether you want to get into a program at all, and specifically this program. I mention that because for students who want to go on to do either research in an employment piece, or who want to go on to a doctorate program, need that research foundation, and you're getting a really solid background in research through this program. So we're very proud of that, and the projects can also serve as writing samples, etc. So it's very advantageous to have this skill set once students leave. For the specialization courses, students can take courses that are within their track only. For the IO psychology program, you can see it's Intro to IO, Organizational Development, Effectiveness, and Performance Management and Motivation. For developmental psych, it's Perspectives on Developmental Psychology, one class that focuses on the early part of life child and adolescent development, and then the second class that focuses on the latter half of life, which is adult development. For the elective courses, as I mentioned, I should put the word elective, I think, in quotes, because they're not really elective. Right now, they are already selected for you. But for IO psychology, students take personnel selection and group dynamics. And for developmental psychology, they take cognitive development and atypical development. In terms of career opportunities, we really find that students who have a degree in psychology, a graduate degree at the master's level, or a degree in developmental psychology or IO psychology at the master's level, find themselves in the human and social services, not surprisingly, particularly for IO, personnel and training, and then for anybody with a very solid research-oriented background in psychology could go into research and data analysis. Now, I don't have any hard and fast numbers for our students because, as I mentioned, our first graduating class was in spring of 18, so we need a few more semesters to be able to follow our students and see exactly where they end up. Some frequently asked questions that I get about the program, and I should mention, my name is Dr. Marquez Lewis, Carla Marquez Lewis, and I am the director for the psychology program, both the undergraduate and graduate program. And so I field a lot of questions about our graduate program, and I can tell you that these are the ones that come up the most. I'll answer these, and then, like I said, I'll open it up, and you can feel free to send any questions that you have. So one of the questions I hear a lot is, can I transfer credits to this new degree program? So these are for students who might have started a master's degree program elsewhere, either in psychology or something else, and then they decide that program isn't for them for whatever reason, and they want to start this program and wonder if any of those credits can transfer over at all. And it's really a complicated answer because the answer is really, it depends. If the credits are from completely outside of psychology, we can't take them. We just don't have any space in the required courses. If you remember when I went through all of the different curriculum, we don't have a place for just general electives where we could put those. So we can't take those credits. However, if it's for a course that we have already on our books and in our curriculum, we would ask that the student submit a syllabus for the course. And as long as that course matches our learning objectives, and so that we know that the skill set that we expect students to get out of our class, they've received from the course that they took at another institution, we can transfer those courses in. We will do that for up to 2 classes and a max of 6 credits. So how long will it take me to get my degree? That's really up to you as the student. As I mentioned, as long as our students are taking 1 class a semester, we're perfectly fine with that. So a student taking 1 class a semester, not taking classes in the summer, obviously that's going to take them a little bit longer. But students who take 2 classes are going to finish a lot faster. Students who take 3 classes, obviously a lot faster. And students who take 4 classes, which I would not advise, again, if you have a full-time job, they're going to get through the program pretty quickly. But I would say a comfortable speed at which to move through this program is 2 years for the fastest, and 3 years is probably a more comfortable pace, 6 semesters. But again, you can take classes in the summer and that speeds things up a little bit. That's just 2 to 3 years is my range if you're not taking summer classes. So is the program really online? Students often wonder, or prospects often wonder, if there's any component that has to be done in person. There is not. We encourage students to come to graduation if they can. It's a wonderful ceremony. It takes place generally at Lincoln Center. Once we have had it at Carnegie Hall, but it's usually at Lincoln Center. It's really wonderful, and we encourage people to come and walk across the stage and get their diploma. But that's optional too. So students can have their diplomas mailed to them. We have students from all around the world, not just the United States. So that's really the only piece. Everything else can be done remotely. Sometimes, especially with the Capstone project, calls are required, but those are scheduled calls between you and your advisor. Sometimes students prefer Skype conversations. Those can be done as well. But otherwise, things are done in a virtual space, and nothing is required of students in person. Are there scholarships? The answer is yes, we do have some scholarships. You can look on our financial aid section of our website. It has the scholarships listed and the criteria for those scholarships. So you can look to determine which of those are geared toward graduate students and then apply to those. But I would say one note is that students do need to, if a student's starting in the fall, they'd have to wait until they'd already been a student in the fall and then apply in the spring, because our cycle only generally takes place in the spring. So if you weren't a student yet, you wouldn't be eligible, right? Finally, will the program prepare me for licensure? So this is a tricky question. Oftentimes what people mean by licensure is they're talking about, will it enable them to get a license as a school psychologist or as a counselor or clinical therapist of some sort. That is not the type of program that we have here. If you're interested in a therapeutic setting or offering clinical psychology skills and services or counseling of some sort, you'd want to specifically target a counseling program, a mental health counseling program, a clinical psychology program. One of those will get you there. But this program is really geared toward people who want to work in IO or want to work in developmental psych, want to work in research. If a student, though, wants to work with children in a clinical setting, what they could do is go through this program to, as I said, develop their portfolio and say, look, I've completed a thesis project. I have all this research experience. I've done well in my graduate level courses. And now I'm asking to be admitted into a PhD program in clinical psychology. So they could do that. But that clinical psychology program is really what's going to prepare them to sit for a licensure exam and to be able to provide therapy. A couple of other just quick things. A lot of times people ask, well, do I have to be a psychology major? No, you don't. We have philosophy, people who have undergraduate degrees in philosophy, social work, sociology, you name it, and we welcome that. Remember, psychology is all about human behavior, and almost everything that we do and almost every field that there is deals with human behavior in some capacity, how humans think, behave, and feel. What if I don't have the 3 pre-admission requirements? So we do ask that students have 3 pre-admission courses, Intro to Psych, which most people have, but not everyone, stats, and research methods. So if a student doesn't have stats or research methods, we can offer them, assuming they meet all of our criteria, conditional admit status. That means that if they're missing statistics, for example, they would take that in their first semester, undergraduate statistics, and they can also opt to concurrently take 1 course or maybe 2 courses from our core course group that I mentioned in the middle of this info session. Those courses that students select 3 to build the foundation, they can take 1 or 2 of those. If a student needs stats and research methods, we would allow them to take 1 of the courses in the fall, either stats or research methods, the undergraduate versions, and then again, 1 or 2 core courses. And then the second semester, they'd have to take the second one, and then they could take the balance of the core courses. Remember, there's only 3 core courses. So if they took 2 in the fall, for example, they could only take 1 in the spring with their other pre-admission requirement. And that's because we don't let students move beyond the core courses without having completed all of their pre-admission courses. Now, you'll notice that I haven't mentioned Intro to Psych. Intro to Psych is the one exception. We cannot allow a student to take any of our courses without having completed Intro to Psychology. So the positive piece, or the positive news, is we offer that session in the winter. So for students who are applying for the spring semester, we offer a version of Intro to Psych. It takes 3 weeks, and they can complete that and then start their classes in the spring. Similarly, for students who are applying in the spring for the fall semester, we offer it 2 times, in the summer in a 7-week session and in a 3-week session. So students can take Intro to Psych and then start in the fall. So we always try to offer an opportunity for students to be able to fulfill that requirement so that they can take their classes when they start with the MA program. The admissions requirements: a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, a personal statement in which you'll talk about why this program, why now, why you're interested, what do you hope to do with it. Either a CV, which is an academic resume, or a traditional resume is just fine. 2 letters of recommendation. They must be professional or academic in nature, a former supervisor or a former professor. You cannot submit letters from colleagues or friends or family members. Transcripts from all of the schools that you've attended, all of them, even if you've just took 1 class in the summer from this campus. We need it for all of them. And I want to highlight this because a lot of people send the last transcript and they think it encompasses everything before, and it doesn't. It has information, but it does not have grades, and we really need the grades. So we need a transcript from everything. It should indicate a cumulative GPA of 3.0. If you have less than a 3.0, that doesn't mean we're not going to accept you. It means that you have to have stronger other areas to balance that out. So you'd have to have really strong letters of recommendation or a strong personal statement, etc. So we look at students holistically, and we recognize that sometimes students have been out of school for a while. Sometimes they didn't do so great, and they've come back as a serious adult now, and they really know what they want. And we take all of that into consideration when looking at admissions. So it's never just 3.0 you're out or 3.0 you're in. We look at the whole. And then the 3 pre-admissions courses are required as well, but I mentioned how you can deal with those if you're missing 1 or 2 or 3. If you're interested in applying to our master's program, the link that's associated with our program page is listed there. The deadline for this spring semester is December 6th, which is the Thursday. If you have any questions about the application process or how to access the portal, you can reach out either to me or to Ayanna Peoples. I'm going to post that slide in just a moment. But you can also go to our webpage. The MA in Psychology program webpage has a button there that you can click, and that also takes you to the application portal, and it has some information about applying as well. You're also always welcome to reach out to our admissions team. I hope that you were able to gain some information from this info session that helps with your decision-making process. But of course, if you have any other questions along the way, you're always welcome to reach out, and we're happy to guide you in the process. So thank you again for sharing your lunch with me, and we hope that you have a really wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.